for me, it was like, this is fantastic. And you can see it in my work here, right? I enjoy experiences. If you're going to do a rave in VR, and this is my own ideology, everyone has their own opinions and preferences. There's no wrong way to do it. But for me, if you're going to have an event in VR, make it something you can't do in reality, like in meat space, you know?
Hello, welcome to Metaverse Degen. I'm Lion.
I'm Old Man Raptor, and we got one hell of a guest today, and that is...
I'm AztecAngelo.
Oh, thank you very much, Aztec, for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here in your world, which looks otherworldly.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you guys.
You got to start the pun shit this early in the morning. Thanks. There we go. Here we go, folks. The puns are in the gears.
I was using it as a descriptor, but not puns. But I can while we're here. We have to sit here and plan it for you to hear more. Okay, I'm done.
Okay. That works for me.
Yeah, you're catching me off guard. I'm never up this early doing puns.
Well,
God, you don't want to get him started. Please don't. You'd never get an interview. It's just strictly him punning out.
Well, with that said, what are you most known for, and how did you get started with everything and into the platform Vrchat?
So I'm most known for running and creating Rift, the world we're currently in right now. We're like a sci-fi lore-based music venue here in Vrchat. I don't necessarily like to say we're a club, but that's kind of what we are. I try to make this more of a music experience and just a site for everyone to have a good time. I got started, oh man, it's kind of hazy, right? So I created an account like pretty early. Like it wasn't quite pandemic times, but it was like right before the pandemic. And I was kind of like that for first Vrchat user experience where I jumped into a Black Cat public and I was like, this is a thing. Intriguing, but it's a thing. But at that point in time, I was like mostly just kind of playing Beat Saber on my headset. It was an old Rift S. And eventually, like, I'll give this more of a shot. And then I realized, oh, wait, you can build shit here and you can upload it. It's kind of like an amalgamation of like all I have been trained to do in school and what I do for work. And I can do it how I want to. Okay, sure. So I started like working on my own avatar. It was really bad. Like the 1.0 version of this Abby, it looks like you turned RTX off and proportions were not great. But that's how I started. And then I ended up going to the music scene. I found Tube and I found a lot of my close friend group there, and that's how we all met. And it was kind of like going through those events and really enjoying the music that really kind of locked me into Vrchat and the music scene here. For one of it was, I think it was the event they did with Naku doing like a huge like Porter Robinson set the whole way through. I forget if that was the one with the slushy cameo as well, but either way, I just remember like Naku singing Porter Robinson towards the end of the event. I was like, okay, that's it. I need to do this now. Like, how can I, jump in and do this for real? And kind of snowballed from there.
Oh, wow. So what were...
I got a question for you, Line, before we get too far. What was, when you first came into VR and you saw the weirdest thing you ever saw in VR and you said, nope, that's not for me, and left? What was it?
Oh, geez. Oh, boy. So I was in a public Black Cat and I was asking around about avatar performances, like, or what can you do on a Vrchat avatar and still stay within like decent quality, right? And this one furry I ran into, he's like, oh yeah, I can tell you all about that. And he's like, he does a couple of tame ones, a couple extra features here and there. And this was before, the fizz bones were a thing and all that. But he's like, let me show you the absolute limit with like avatar animation constraints and everything else that can go on. And he spawns in this doghouse, this giant doghouse, Abby, and it's just a whole bunch of furries fucking each other in it. on top, inside. It was just like, what the fuck?
Oh my god!
You're like, yeah, this is my
That would
most
be-
amount of like, or like animation controllers and skeletal meshes you could put in here without it being really, really bad. I was like, I didn't need to see this, but thanks.
Thanks for the details. Eek! Wow. You're going, wow. At least I understand how animals get it on late in the morning or early in the afternoon or whatever it might be. But wow, this is great. And we're all in the doghouse. Now you know how they got. Now you know, folks. Now you know what happens when you get sent to the doghouse by your significant other. There you go.
Raptor, you're gonna cause so many fights with that line. You have no idea. It goes from you Dutch oven me in my sleep to you're cheating on me. Great drastic change.
Eek!
Oh, so
My Sowie.
now what led to the creation of Rift, and what was some of the inspirations for the idea?
Sure. So for me, I work in an robotics educational company. So a lot of the stuff that we do is very low end because our main user base is Chromebooks and have to be accessible everywhere. Especially this was like during the pandemic, people couldn't access their physical robot kits. So like, all right, we'll make something where you can still write your code in a web browser, hit play, and it'll load up like a little Unity playground, and your robot will like perform the code you just wrote. It's really cool. But for me, my background is in environmental design for 3D. That's what I went to school for. So I wasn't necessarily creatively fulfilled with it, right? I wanted to kind of spread my wings and put something a little bit higher fidelity. And I loved VR. Like I've always kind of dreamt about full experience, like full dive VR since I was a kid. I'd sit late at night. I'm like, oh, how would like moving around in VR work? Would you have to have like this capsule thing with like suspension? Like how would that work? But yeah, so it was just kind of that, along with the fact that I had really been enjoying VRchat for a while at that point, and I wanted to find a way to give back to the community, not just by throwing events, but showcasing other communities and making it a really cool space. So I started building, and I'm like, I love sci-fi. I have this cool idea where if I'm going to be promoting other communities, I want a way, in the sense that works with lore, how can I bring those other communities here for an experience that's a bit more than just your standard collab where, oh yeah, your people come over to my venue and we have fun. No, I want something that we're like, hey, I'm showing off your community, not just the people you play for music, but like parts of your world, like your theme, right? So that's where I came up with Rift, where it's like the whole point is these screens you see around here, these rifts, are kind of like gateways or portals to another club's dimension. So like once a month we'll have what we call a Nexus event where I collaborate with their world creator and the head of their club, and we'll bring in different aspects. I have this tool that can like scan the interior of their club and output it to a texture. So like we'll open up new rifts throughout the space in here, and we'll show the interior of their club. And it's like on a panosphere, kind of like how my wings are. So like depending on how you look at them, it shows a different area of it. So that's really fun. And then we'll add in certain props from their world that are easily identifiable. And then we'll add stuff to the computer, which is a whole different conversation. But yeah, so I wanted to promote other communities, give back, fulfill my creativity, and throw events at the same time, doing what I loved in VRchat.
Oh, wow. I have a whole lot more questions, but I'll start with, I guess I go further back in the beginning because I'm curious, what led you to environmental design, and how has VRchat's tools and abilities been able to enable you to create things?
Sure. So I mean, back when I was a kid, like Kingdom Hearts 1 came out, right? And I played that, and I saw the opening sequence of that, like their high fidelity render intro cinematic. And I saw like the beach. I'm like, oh my God, those graphics are amazing. Like one day I want to do something like that. I want to make something really cool. and like really pretty. And so that's just kind of where it began. God, how old was I? Like 13, 14 at that point. And then from there, I was like, okay, get through school, go to college, learn how to do 3D stuff. At that point in time, I was learning Unreal Engine. I only had very little Unity experience. Luckily, my job after college taught me Unity. But through VRChat and how that's helped, it's been an interesting experience. Like, I know, like, no matter where you go, there's different communities out there that build stuff and put it out on a marketplace, right?
Mm.
But typically that's like asset packs or certain like core systems to your generic video game, right?
Mm.
Here it's just like, man, people are really kind of pushing the boundaries, like what you can do, and especially for such a limited functionality game like VRChat. Like, yes, we have a lot of tools with Udon and whatnot, but like you still don't have the full experience of C# and full access to everything the engine can do. Rightfully so. Like, you don't want people like hacking the game and breaking the experience for everyone, but what people are able to achieve in here is just awesome, and the community is so like good at the creativity and pushing out there to share. And that's the other thing I loved about the VR space is like everyone's more or less really helpful in like sharing, and it's not gatekeepy. I mean, sure, you have the bad actors here and there, but that's what really inspired me to keep going with this and fall in love with the community, is just the creativity.
Oh, wow. So how similar or different is the process that you've seen and experienced here in VRChat, what people do versus what you've seen outside of the platform?
I'm not exactly sure how to take the question.
Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm just like, I'm trying to think. Are you talking like
Well,
like process wise or
creation, engine use, what people are building and stuff? How similar or different is that? Sorry, I'm really good at super broad questions.
No, you're good. You're good. Okay. So first of all, the structure of what you would go through with a typical game studio is more or less not present unless you have a creator that's been doing this for a long time, really knows their stuff. They have a pipeline down, and they're just pumping stuff out, right? Overall, especially like working with a lot of the creators in this space, whether they be like other world creators or club owners or just asset creators, they don't know a lot of the tools or a lot of the shortcuts for like Unity or like Blender. Granted, I'm a 3ds Max guy for 3D modeling. I'm not great at Blender. I've only started learning Blender because of VRChat. And I still mostly use 3ds Max because that's what I know. But it's what I find is, yeah, a lot of these creators, there are things that surprise me, like they know and I had no clue about, even with all of my, bachelor degree training and on the job experience. And then there's stuff where I'm just like, oh, you can like really speed up your workflow or like make your life 1,000 times easier if you just do this, right? And they're like, oh my God, I had no clue. Thank you so much. It's give and take, but I've noticed like a lot of the times with the creators in VRChat, it's a little bit more amateur, but they're also just crazy cracked, and they'll go full bore on something and just get her done.
Wow. So I appreciate the inside input. I'm going to kind of dive back into some questions on Rift and what you've done in VRChat a little bit. What have been some of your favorite events you've done with Rift? And what have been some ones that your community likes?
Oh, man. So I do need to get more community feedback. I did a poll forever ago. Like, hey, what type of events do you like? Multi-genre, single genre, the Nexus event collabs? And it feels like a lot of them are like, oh, yeah, single genre events. I'm like, I don't do those a whole lot. But people still come and they still enjoy it. The ones I really enjoy, honestly, is like the new events where I throw in a new feature to the world and I can play with it. So our last event we had, it was a Nexus event with Club Dark. I'm not sure if you interact with them at all. Takedown and their crew are fantastic. But for that event, obviously, as I mentioned earlier with our Nexus events, we threw in extra like assets. Like they had some like iconic seats we put on that asteroid over there, and we opened up new rifts and whatnot. But I put in a new warp drive effect for the visual experience, and that was a whole lot of fun to play with. And it was, especially in the fact that like we're with our friends, right? Like I definitely don't showcase a community without doing a little bit of background research or like being some of their events and kind of sussing them out, because I want to promote the positive sides of VRChat. Like I don't want to go to someone who has like the typical ego tripping, power hungry. That's not what I want to encourage here. Like the beauty of VRChat is everyone cooperating together, having a good time, and just being creative. But let's see, if I had to choose one of the ones that really stuck out where I had a lot of fun making the world was we hosted the after party for the third Sly Fest mini back in last year. So if you're watching this video in the future, 2023, right before they went on hiatus. It was a whole lot of fun to make the world. I had a lot of material to work with. I was also part of the dev team that year for Sly Fest, so I got to bring in some of the assets I had worked on, bring it in here. It was really cool. Super proud of that. But yeah.
So I actually have a couple of questions. It could be two different subject questions, but feel free to answer them in your own at your own leisure and pace. What made you want to use Rift to showcase communities, and what has that experience been like? I'll start with that question before I go too nuts.
I mean, that was it's one of its core principles. It was, the whole aspect of having my creative fulfillment, but also promoting the community through our events. So from the beginning, that was one of its core principles. In terms of how it's come about, it's been interesting. It's been mostly a positive experience. Then I had a few times where some plans fall through or have to get like pushed back or cancel altogether. But I mean, usually everyone that kind of comes into this is super excited. They give everything I need on time, so I have time to build the world beforehand. It's just been really cool. I'm not entirely sure, like, I need to do follow up with some of these communities that we've done Nexus events with and be like, hey, how has like your community changed since we've done this event? Like, is it helping your numbers? Is it helping your, exposure to newer audiences? I would like to think it has, because otherwise it kind of defeats the purpose. But yeah, overall, even if it doesn't, I'm still going to do these, collaborative Nexus style events because they're a lot of fun. And I like, helping out other communities and giving them that promotion.
What have been, now I'm going to ask a question I've been asked, and I answer very vaguely, but what have been some of your favorite collabs you've done with other communities?
Ooh. As I said, the Sly Fest one was really fun because it was really involved. Like this place was fully decked out more than I usually do because we had so much material to work with. Our very first one will probably always be memorable to me. This was still when we were in Site Alpha, not Epsilon. Was our collaboration with Reflect, like Zia's club over there. That I think was a huge dynamic shift in Rift. Beforehand, I only had like the spotlights, I think. Oh god, my tracking is rotating again. We didn't have all the really cool visual effects, screen space shaders before we collaborated with them. Zia's club over at Reflect. I don't know if you've ever been there before, but essentially a box. There's a whole like a pit in the center. Hold on, my trackers are really going off key. Oh my goodness.
Oh.
There we go. That's much better. Okay, so it is one of the, like, it's a box with a pit in the center where you have your VJ and your DJ back to back. Above it, there's a pole coming from the ceiling with a circular glass platform where the dancer can be doing their thing, shaking their booty, having fun. But the two walls on either side are very reflective. Outside of like the two walls over here are reflective. These two walls are video screens that are mirrored. So essentially with those reflective screens, it kind of looks like the visuals are going on far and far and far and far. And it's a really cool experience. But they also have the screen space shaders, like an outline and some like really cool like staticky ones. And for me, I loved going there when I was first starting off in the VR chat club scene. They don't do so many events nowadays, which is a shame. But I know people get busy. But regardless, that event for us kind of, kicked off all the visual effects here. I really enjoyed how they looked, and I had a lot of fun playing around with the control panel and just playing with all the different effects. So that was definitely an iconic one for us. On top of the Sly Fest one, the one we did with Dreamwalkers was interesting, and not so much so for the Nexus aspect of it, but the performances that were done. So Loki, the head of Dreamwalkers, he brought in like their group to do a live rapping session, along with they brought on one of their buddies to also do straight live rap in music, and it was really interesting. I was totally expecting it to like go sideways because of desyncing issues, or just a lot of their community is brand new. They had an existing music group, like their main thing was on YouTube, and then they brought their community into VR chat, and they just blew up overnight because of it, right? But with that, like their crew was still very new, their performers were still very unfamiliar with VR chat, but it went swimmingly.
Oh.
Beyond some like oddities with like the avatar like kind of freaking out because they were using Quest standalone. The music went through just fine. There was no delay, there was no hiccups. It was a beautiful thing. So that was really neat for us to have like live music for most of the event, rather than just DJ stuff. So from a live music standpoint, that was pretty good. And one of the recent one we did was with Trans Academy. That I think was the most impactful for like new eyes on our community. It was really neat because I wasn't expecting much other than like, hey, I know this community is really cool and I want to do something for Pride Month. And it's like, hey, let's give it a shot. Like this is our very first non-club community that we're having this event type with. Let's see how it goes. And they were great. They gave me everything I needed on time. They were really responsive and helpful. And their community has just been great. I've been seeing a lot more of their community showing up for events now ever since. So yeah, I think for that one, it was really good. Not only from, a community standpoint, but just from the fact like this was our first non-club community that we're doing a Nexus event with.
Wow. So I have a question based on the first of your very first collab. What about that event and that collab enabled you to use more effects and made you want to include all these other world effects and of things going on?
Sure. It gave me a baseline of what to use. Like my biggest thing at that point, because I'm not a shaders guy. I'm a model monkey for the most part. I like to model stuff up. I can do a little bit of basic coding, but when it came to shaders and visual effects stuff, I didn't know how that all worked at that point in time. So Zia was kind enough to show me what she was using, and so I grabbed. I think it was it Mochi's? I think it was Mochi's for the basics stuff that we used. So I grabbed Mochi's Patreon pack and got the town on making her own effects, so we weren't just using her effects in the world. Sorry, we're not using Zia's effects. We're still using Mochi. Just to be clear on that one. But yeah, so we kind of spiraled from there. And then once we got a little bit bigger, I brought Vestro on board as, my shader and coding guy. That's, a bit more in depth. And together we've been cranking out new visual effects and having a whole lot of fun with it. They kind of fell in love with also playing with the effects during the event. And they've just kind of been sticking around ever since.
Oh, wow.
With which I am very grateful.
So I have another question, kind of similar in vein as well. How much have you learned from working and doing stuff in VR chat? Have you used any of it outside of the platform, the knowledge?
Oh, so for me, coming from my background, so a little insight. I went to the Art Institute for college, which no longer exists. There's a reason for that. The warning signs were there while I was going through, where like teachers were leaving. It was downscaling. They were getting sued for misrepresenting the numbers of placements of jobs after they graduate, or even just graduation numbers. So my education was enough to get me baseline, but not in terms of being more of a technical artist for environmental art. So in terms of like optimizing. So I knew how to like optimize a model, lower polygons, make sure your textures are done this way, atlasing, that typical works. But when it came to, collider work, making sure systems weren't, using too many draw calls and all like the more technical stuff, that was something I learned here. There's a certain individual who wished to not be named, who was very helpful in my very beginning blockout stages of this world, like teaching me how to do things proper from an optimization standpoint from world dev. Very, very fundamental on that, but it's also something I could use outside in my actual job.
Oh wow!
It helped me out with the skill sets there. So that's been really awesome. Yeah.
Oh,
mostly just optimization stuff.
okay. Well, I appreciate you explaining that. I was just kind of curious because one of the things I like asking about with people such as yourself who kind of breach both worlds of like development, other stuff outside of VR, and those who are strictly inside VR. I like seeing and hearing about the crossovers, what kinds of things happen, what people think of either side. I'm curious. That's it. I'm just curious about it. So I apologize for any question you do want to answer. Feel free to tell me to piss off. That's no big deal.
No, you're fine. You're fine. That's the whole point we're here, right? Like to ask questions, have a good time, have a conversation.
So since you started doing the collabs within Rift, how many events have you done? And do you, is your community engaging to the whole thing, may I ask? Do they enjoy the collabs? And do you enjoy doing the various collabs as well?
So as of a couple weeks ago, which was our last event, we just hit 50 official events. We hold a lot of like hosted events for other communities if they want to come here and throw a birthday party or whatever. I'll make a special build for that with some balloons and cake, whatever. But officially, we've just held our 50th event recently. We're about to have our 51st event in a few days on Friday.
Oh wow.
I won't be there for it. I'll be at Colossal Con East, but hey, if anyone's over there, I have stickers. But yeah, no, I think our community really enjoys it. I really enjoy doing them. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work, but it's still a whole lot of fun, especially, interacting with like the other communities, like staff, and just their community overall, and like having them be like, oh wait, that's our thing over here. Like, oh, I didn't realize you put that over there. That's from our club. And just like watching them explore and kind of get giddy over the fact like, oh, that's really cool. These, they're meshing. And then on top of that is like the world computer. Again, if we want to talk about that later, we can, but there's a lot of stuff packed into that thing. From a lore standpoint and like the world history standpoint. But yeah, no, I think everyone seems to enjoy them.
Well, you had me at lore. Would you mind explaining the computer? Because I enjoy VRChat lore. So, and that's.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. See you, bitch. Yeah, here we go. You got him all wound up now. He's gonna go. Wow, what? No offense, folks, but I'm not mopping the floor. Okay, yeah. All
right. Well, look, you don't have to mop the asteroid. It just kind of floats away wherever it gets wet.
Oh God! Now
it's space.
Oh no, that's nasty. That's just downright nasty.
Hey, easy cleaning, right? In the void of space, no one will hear you scream. I mean, wait, what?
What? Yeah, no. It's okay if I get a cup of coffee to go. That's all I give a shit. I don't care what.
All right, just make sure it's in a sealed container. Otherwise, it might just kind of come out the top.
Yeah, I'll be chasing it around looking like a fish out of water. Yeah, I got you. No problem.
Right. So lore, right. So we have two Rift sites, Site Alpha and Site Epsilon, which we're currently at. Site Alpha was our first kind of get it out the door world, get the baseline models. I wasn't quite happy with the visual aesthetics, but hey, we can at least get things started. Lore for that is very similar to what's here, so I'm just going to talk about the lore, and it generally applies for both, until it doesn't, which I'll explain later. So, Rift in general, lore-wise, there's a company called Eden, which is kind of like an intergalactic exploration, innovation, research type organization where their whole goal is to explore the universe, find new things, chart unknowns, and make things generally overall a better place. Lore-wise, if you ever read our lore entries, they're a little dubious on certain details. They're not squeaky clean. But one of their exploration vessels was kind of charting the far known reaches of the universe, trying to expand the global map, or sorry, the universal map at that point, not global. And they came across an asteroid with these strange dimensional tears at them. And so essentially they plopped down some portal tech, which is the giant Stargate you walk through to get into the venue. And they just kept on trucking. The portal was opened up to their homeworld base, where they just kind of had a crew come out, build up a research station, and try to study these rifts and communicate through them via sound, our DJs, visual expression, our dancers, and just trying to have a good time with that. So lore-wise, all these different rifts, which are video screens, are just kind of like our attempts to communicate through the different dimensions wherever they're connected to. From there, we started holding more experiments over time. Most everything, I've fallen behind on writing entries. I am sorry for anyone who reads those religiously, if there's anyone that actually does that. I've fallen behind on it, but everything you see in here, anything that becomes new, since I'm constantly working on the world, any new public avatars we have in the world for people to use, they all have their own reason for existing from a lore standpoint. Like the hedgehog UFO Abbey that you might see outside the station, or people flying around the world with from time to time. That was just someone who was looking after another crew member's hedgehog, and they weren't paying attention, and it got out, and it's a little bit of a genetically engineered one, so it's a bit smarter than the rest, and it hijacked an experimental UFO and started flying around the station because it wanted to. Stuff like that. Last year, we had Grin's Murder Spree tour. So for that event, it was a DJ tour, and so I didn't have anything to work with from a Nexus standpoint. But I wanted to give reason to the murder tour stopping at Rift. So I kind of created a crime scene, chalk outline, blood splatters all over the place. And I made lore entries of some, sorry intern just got murked, just working, and some stranger came through the rift, started on a murder spree, and left. It's just one of those situations. So that, and then that would kickstart off a lot of the crew at Site Alpha not feeling comfortable or just having a lot of bad memories there. So once Site Epsilon was discovered, a year after Site Alpha was discovered, a lot of that crew transferred over to Epsilon to continue their research and continue studying the rifts and keeping their jobs.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of the lore for that. And then we're here, and we're expanding bit by bit, adding new things. Who knows where the story's going to go from here? So actually, no, I can go off one more.
Go ahead.
We've done...
Oh no, lore, how terrible.
Oh god, my trackers again. Oh no, hold on, my trackers are making me very twisted. Every time I look down, I'm like, oh, my slimes are rotating. Great. I need to dial that in a bit better.
We all love those tracker moments where one tracker decides to not track, and off to space you go.
Right. Okay, I think I'm better now. So we've done a lot of collaborations. Well, we've done a few collaborations with Focus Entertainment in the past. And we've kind of been using those collaborations as an overarching storyline for Rift. So we did Elements, it's been a couple years ago now. It feels like tracking time is hard. But we had a fun time there where, you know, one of his people made like the celestial starry galaxy woman. And we brought some of our Spartan avatars in as like researchers, and we're like, hey, like we got called over to Focus Entertainment. What's going on? And I'm like, oh, there's like a rift breaking open in our sky. Like, can you check that out? And I was like, yeah, okay. So we're kind of like experimenting around. It's a real goofy format. Also in lore, a lot of our researchers are just they're goofballs. The long and short of it is they're goofballs. So if you watch the videos, which are they're real goofy, don't take them seriously. While we're filming it, you just see their numbers multiplying in the background out of nowhere without any explanation, and then you just see them. They're like kicking each other, just like, you know, goofing off and not taking their job seriously at all. While the main cast is like, okay, I think this could be something noteworthy. Hey, go write that down. Oh, you son of a bitch! Pay attention. You know, that type of thing. But at that point, we were kind of studying some of the rocks here, because it was a gift that Eden had sent Focus Entertainment at one point. Because gift from a legal standpoint, because if you expose lore-wise these rocks to something that contains certain chemicals like you would have in your sweat, it creates a hallucinogenic gas, and you can start tripping. So under the table, Eden's been kind of like using it as a supplementary cash flow before it gets regulated.
Oh my
But
God.
unbeknownst to anyone involved, these rocks actually kind of weaken, or at least the ore inside of these rocks kind of weakens the fabric between realities. So if you get enough of them in a concentrated spot, well, you have a chance of a rift opening up. As was the case with when we had a collaboration with Myriad, their Hangar 7 world. If you go to that world now, it's just a base of a building and a crime scene, because most of it got sucked up through a rift. After we were done. It was kind of Vestro's way of retiring the world, but at the same time, we made it fun. Like, oh yeah, no, it got sucked through and it ain't coming back. So for Focus Entertainment, we kind of got sucked into a pocket dimension when I still had my old V1 Abby. And she kind of like gave this message. It was really garbled and you couldn't understand it at the time. But she kind of went up and touched my old avatar and it transformed into the V2. That was kind of like my way of explaining how I had a visual upgrade. But it kind of shot us back out. And from there, like the Celestial Woman's kind of been like lurking and like watching ever since. We had a Valentine's event this year with Focus at a new world where the entire comet that this event took place in was made up of all of these minerals, and there was like condensed crystallized forms of the ore in the world as well. So we kind of had more lore with that, where, you know, we were trying to translate what the Celestial Woman was saying, and we finally got like a message out of it, and it was kind of like the date of the event. It's kind of like a little teaser thing. But yeah, she's kind of a core element in Rift's lore, kind of going forward. I won't reveal much more of that, partly because I don't want to give stuff away, but also at the same time, I still need to write it.
Fair enough. You know, I do have a question then for you as well. What inspired you to write lore for Rift? What kind of started, and what were some elements you pulled from other places, and why did you want to do lore in the first place?
Honestly, it was just something I thought would be fun. It gave reason to why we're here beyond just, oh yeah, throw events. And also environmental storytelling is important. So it just kind of gave the place a little bit more charm. Simple as that.
Okay. So with that said, what have been some ways you've done environmental storytelling through Rift, or even your own works that you enjoy? What are some like key items in your toolkit?
I mean, a lot of it is just set dressing. I haven't gone too extensive with like the set dressing in the dome, just because like it is a event venue, so the more optimized the better. I pride myself on the optimization. You know, we're both PC VR Quest compatible, and every time you come in here, you'll get great frames, unless, you know, we're nearly capped out. As is most things, right? But like in the dome there, we still have like some research implementation, like different instruments, telescopes and test tubes and everything else like that. And then we have the cryo bay. We have like a medical examination table for like when you get out, stuff like that. Trying to tie in the reason, like, oh, if you fall off the world, you respawn in the cryo bay. Like, okay, you got to thaw now, and let's get a medical examination, make sure you're tip top shape before you get back out there and start doing more of your research. And then with the environmental stuff as well, like I was mentioning before with Grin's Murder Spree Tour, adding in those extra elements of like what happened here. It's not just an event called Grin's Murder Spree. There is in the world, there was a murder. There were multiple murders here. And then a lot of the environmental storytelling as well are in the computer itself. So I keep mentioning it. Essentially, that houses not only past events, it describes like whoever played for DJing, whoever danced, whoever was collaborating with us, the date, the in-lore explanation of how that experiment went, because each of our events are experiments, right? So that not only holds like our history, but also all of our lore entries, and that's where like a lot of that comes as well. They all have dates on them. And then we also have different attributions to like different communities we worked with, or different different communities we've done Nexus events with. Like they have their own description in there. Some a bit more straightforward, like sales pitchy, like, hey, this is who we are. Others, a bit more lore ingrained, like, oh yeah, like this person came through and was talking about this, that, or the other, and it's interesting because we saw this thing come flying out of the rift and go back in at one point. But yeah, that's where that comes from. I'm sorry, I lost track of the thought. I went down so many tangents. I swear I'm ADHD sometimes.
No, how terrible. Tangents and information. What are we going to do?
What are we going to do? We got to run for the hills. He's got off his planet. Yeah, right. We don't mind.
Well, honestly, another question before this lore talk makes me create hallucinogenic gas here. We talked with someone before that you've mentioned, and we've actually talked with before as well, who mentioned the tour, Grin. What was it like as a collab and event, the tour? What did you think of that?
It was a lot of fun, honestly. It was heavy. I mean, it's Grin we're talking about. They play some heavy stuff. But it was a fun point for me, just changing up the station into the state it was. Grim for the the hypothetical researchers there, but it was a lot of fun for us. Oh man, I think we were towards like the end of his tour as well. I think we were maybe like third from last, but yeah, overall it was a fun event. It went well.
I only ask because you don't hear very many tours in VRChat. I don't think it's a common thing, which is why I asked about it. So I wonder what your thoughts on it, and would you want to see more stuff like that, or what do you think was good for what it was?
The tour is fun. I mean, it kind of gives me like festival vibes, where a lot of these communities will group together with a whole bunch of other ones, and they'll hold multi-day music festivals. But this one, it's definitely more geared towards the artist. So I think that's interesting. If you have a following, large enough to span, weeks of events, and you have the content to span weeks of events, I think it's a cool idea. If it works out, it works out. But I can definitely see, like, if you don't have that following, you might be petering out towards the end of your tour, because it's not like real life, right? Where people are geolocated, they're kind of geo-locked. So you wait for the event of that tour that comes to you to go see them, versus in VRChat, like, oh, you just throw on a headset or just even log in on your phone and you can go see an event. So I think there's something to work around there. And again, like, you have to have the content, you have to have the community for it. But the location stuff is cool. I really enjoyed the fact that they were touring different venues every stop of the tour.
Oh, wow. Oh, so I have another bit of a weird question as well. It's a bit of off another side tangent, but since we've come in VRChat, did you have any first experiences here on the platform that you remember? Or
give me 1 second. I'm a little thirsty.
Damn, he needs a bigger mug than I drink out of. Holy fuck. Well, he is a big man.
It's sized
so,
to my
yeah.
hand, and it gives me a little real estate space to put stickers on it.
Well, if you don't dump it on the fucking rock here, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Could fly away.
Yep, there it went.
All right. Okay, first experiences from, I guess, what perspective or like
Yes.
category?
Yes.
Yes. Oh boy. All right.
God, you and your goddamn yeses. Yes. 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 There's never a no in there somewhere, but we can't find it.
With me, I like hearing stories and information, so I will never specify or force you into a single story.
Oh man. All right, let's see. First, well, obviously that day the black cat we talked about earlier, that was definitely a first.
I'm sure it was.
That was definitely a yes. But maybe I get the hell out of here. Bullshit. That wasn't anything else. Screw this. Oh, wow. Did you see what he just showed me? I'm scarred for life. Boom, 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 boom. That's a yes.
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 Let's see.
Jesus.
A first for me. Honestly, a lot of the stuff for VR has been a first in VR chat. Like I mentioned before, like before I kind of jumped in here, it was mostly like Space Pirate Trainer or Beat Saber. But coming in here, the creativity, oh my god, these worlds are fantastic. Like I never expected to be in a place like this for one. It wasn't even an inkling in my mind when I first joined in VR chat. But I mean, I really love the particle animation worlds, like a lot of the ones from Mochi. Oh my god, those are fantastic. That was some of the things that really anchored me with my core friend group. Like, yeah, we met up at 2, but like, hey, like, you want to like come like world hop and hang out? I'm like, yeah, sure. We found a particle world, and we found a particle animation hub, and we are just like jumping from world to world there, and it was really, really cool. That and Treehouse in the Shade, I really enjoyed that one, and I met some really cool people there. Shame their video player is broken. Anyways, tangent. Sorry.
Oh, don't worry. I'll be asking about those later.
Some of the really cool ones, like obviously there's the pilot worlds, which are really cool. Like you would never be able to, unless you're a trained pilot, you can never fly one of those in person. Then there was a drift. Shame that went private. I don't know why. But that trippy world, I don't know if you've ever been before. It's like an acid trip, honestly. The whole world.
Oh, so that's why I can't find the world anymore? Adrift? I loved that world. It's such a fun world to explore.
Yeah, I was perusing. I know not a whole lot of people go on there, but I do from time to time. Facebook, there's a VR chat group on there, and someone was like, "What happened to Adrift? I can't find it." Apparently, if you have the world link, you can still access it because it's only private. But yeah, it's a shame they didn't make it. They didn't keep it public. I don't know what happened. What was the other one? Organism. That's an interesting world. That's a huge world. If you haven't been there, highly suggest. It'll mess with your brain a little bit, but not in a trippy sense, more of like a perspective-y kind of fever dream sense.
Yeah, Dr.
Best way to
Morrow
describe that.
does really good with a whole fever trip kind of transition into different environments thing. I loved that of the whole world, all of them, even Epilogue.
Oh yeah. Oh, I don't think I've been to. Have I been to Epilogue? If not, I need to go again because
You
I
should.
get it confused with another one.
I could also be confusing Organism and Epilogue too, so it could also be equally my fault.
No, that's fair. A lot of the games in here too, like the murder and like all those in the similar vein, right? Prison Escape. I would never expect to play that in person. Like I remember being a kid at camp, like playing Mafia or some other game that's very similar to a degree. You're like a who did it type of situation, but I never expected to be myself running around and either stabbing or running. Actually, no, I guess there's a similar thing to that. We did play like a zombies game. That was a lot of fun with Nerf guns. That year was It was fun. A lot of the staff there on like the off weekends, we'd mod them or Nerf guns, make them a whole lot stronger. Take off the limiters and really go to town. It was like a 24-hour like zombie hunt or like survival game. So like even if you were trying to sleep, you were still susceptible to getting like murked. Anyway, that another tangent. God damn it. Other
So
experiences.
Did you? Well, I want to ask you about that. Also, you triggered a memory of mine as well by saying the zombie hunt. Was that with your work team, the zombie thing?
No. So yeah, it was like the staff at the camp. Like I worked at like a summer camp for like 6 years when I was like middle and high school. And that was So like when the campers are gone for the weekend, or like we had a couple days off, and we could still stay at the camp if we wanted. But like the people that stayed there, we had been buying up Nerf guns for a while, or like materials like pool noodles with PVC pipes for swords, or like blow dart situations. And we were just like prepping for that weekend just to have a really fun time.
Oh,
because we had the entire campground. Like the different cabins out in the woods, the ravine, the pond, the whole shebang. So it was a whole lot of fun.
oh. So I'm going to ask about the tube adventure that you alluded to that kind of made you fall in love with the music scene, if I'm understanding it correctly. What was that event, and why did it interest you? Why did it kind of make you pull you into the music scene? Hello, we're here to interrupt the most interesting thing being said in our current video to ask you a favor, which is, would you mind joining us on any of the socials we have, such as Discord? We're hanging out all the time playing video games, so you can catch us there very frequently. We have I run Twitter for us, which is LionTurtle21 on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. It'll always be Twitter. But either way, there's that. We also have a Patreon, which we actually have a whole other show for our Patreon members, which are Aliquum and the newest addition to the bunch, Future Oracle,
Niche, and Forbidden Zero, good friends of ours.
Yeah, thank you very much, you guys, for joining. It means a whole lot that you're there, and hope to see you there as well. We have a whole other show. There are some free ones we have released as well for the audio for you to listen to and to see what it's like. It's like a whole other show, so thank you. With that said, please enjoy the rest of your podcast on YouTube.
So there's a mixture of factors at play there. So I had gone to a Tube event. This was back when Tube was still very round and like a subway tube, and that was like the main menu. There wasn't much to it. Hayden was still fleshing out the world, getting like his vision on it. That was back when there was like this is even before then. There was a car you had to click on that would take you to like the venue location, and then you just kind of descended the long staircase or eventually the elevator to get into the venue. And that was a lot of fun. Like the screens were essentially the entire arc, and then like the front wall, and like, there was back speakers that like my crew would like stand on. It'd be a lot of fun. So it was not only like the music scene, because I hadn't been to a rave before at that point. So like this was all new to me. I was really enjoying the music, and I met some really cool people there. But I was never able to get into main instance like the first few times I went in there. So I was in overflow instance, and we were just goofing off. Like we found like a chimpanzee avatar with a bunch of dance emotes on it, and we were just going to town. Like someone changed into a gorilla, went behind the DJ booth, and was like just DJing as a gorilla. While there's a group of monkeys in the back jumping around and dancing and enjoying the music. It was hilarious. I loved that, and I was like, you know what? This is fucking it. This creativity, this fucking hilarity, and it's just like we can do what we want. Like obviously you can't do that in the main instance. Please practice proper etiquette when you're going to events. If it's not allowed, don't do it. But if it is, have fun.
I'm a bad influence. I'm the person who would go into Walmart, align all the holiday toys that dance together and push buttons. So I'm not the person you want to say, behave yourself to.
Okay. Well, as a disclaimer then, right? If you're at Rift, all right, when you're at Rift, feel free to have fun, as long as you're not being like super tall and disruptive, because we do have a stream camera that's going on. It goes to Twitch. But like, for example, the end of my birthday set, we had Naku playing, and he was doing his thing. I told him, like, play a Porter Robinson, like, give me that dopamine from that point, like I remembered years ago that locked me in here. And so he was mixing, singing, and playing piano all at the same time. If I don't know if you've ever had Naku on here, but highly suggest that individual, that he's a good bean. He's very talented individual. But he was sitting here playing. He's like, "Hey, I don't want to be in the DJ booth. Can I be right in front of him?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, do your thing." Because he has like a whole piano thing pop up for his avatar that he was using. But a lot of his fans came around too, and they changed into these giant shrimp avatars, like shrimps that are about like this tall off the ground, and they're just floating. So essentially, I'm like, I found my people. So I changed into their avatar. I'm like, guys, I want you to do me a favor. Circle pit the DJ booth. Just circle it. I don't care. Just circle. And they're like, okay. And so, yeah, that's what we did. We circled the DJ booth. And essentially, like, Naku, like, finally looked up from singing and playing piano, was like, what's with all these shrimp mid-set? It's like, what's with these shrimp? And it's funny because, like, so we record all of our sets afterwards. We put them onto YouTube with the visuals from the Twitch stream. And it's funny, every time I'll sit there and I'll be listening to that set while I'm at work, and then out of nowhere, what's with these freaking shrimp? I have to laugh every time.
Oh.
But yeah, so tangent disclaimer aside, if you're here having fun, feel free to do so, as long as you're not being overly disruptive. Back to the original question, though, what kind of kept me there from the tube experience. So yeah, I met a lot of my friends there. And then I was also very active in their Discord early on. That's, again, it kind of solidified my core friend group here. And we were helping each other out with like our very first avatars, right? Like our infancy stages of VRchat. Like, okay, some people went the vroid route. I was like, I can 3D model. I suck at avatars, but I'm going to give it a try. So I made my avatar from scratch. Modeled, rigged, the whole shebang. It was a nightmare looking back at it, but hey, it was a learning experience. And like we were helping each other out because there was a couple of people that I met that were more experienced in the game, especially with avatars and whatnot. They were helping give us tips, and like we were also kind of helping any newbies to the Tube Discord server, like kind of get acclimated. Like, hey, I have this question. I'm like, oh, well, I can help you out in this regard. And we all kind of became Patreon members so we can get the VIP treatment to try to get in there early or have like the access to the VIP section. But yeah, like maybe that be like a core memory for me because of my core friend group on top of the rave experience for the first time and falling in love with that. And then just the rave community is so much more overall mature compared to the rest of like the public instances. It's a little bit more of an adult oriented, you're dealing with screamers and everything else. Mostly you're avoiding the trolls. I just really enjoyed the experience, and especially I'm a huge Porter Robinson fan. So when Naki was playing it at that event, and I was really drunk at the time, and I was living life and having a great time, and I'm like, all right, I'm locked in. Let's do this.
Oh, so VRchat was your first time introduced to a rave at all. What were your thoughts of like seeing raves and VR?
Oh man, so raves with VR is, for me, it was like, this is fantastic, and you can see it in my work here, right? I enjoy experiences. If you're gonna do a rave in VR, and this is my own ideology, everyone has their own opinions and preferences. There's no wrong way to do it. But for me, if you're gonna have an event in VR, make it something you can't do in reality, like in meat space, That's why I like you're out in space. Like, you can't do this shit. You can't just like stroll outside, jump on your rocket ship and blast off and live in, not have to worry about the vacuum of space freezing your bones. But I enjoy the creativity. I enjoy experiencing new things I haven't seen before or I can't do in my normal day to day. And I know there's a lot of clubs out there that replicate reality, and kudos to them. Like, doing realistic venues, like doing the photorealistic thing is not easy. You have to make sure you know what you're doing to make it look right without falling into the uncanny valley. but yeah, no, that's for me. That's what kind of keeps me doing events in VR. Why I really like doing it. Um, yeah, just overall the creativity and things I couldn't do in person. Although I have to say, it's kind of ruined me on IRL raves. Like, don't get me wrong, there's something to be said for it, right? It's a different experience overall.
Mm.
But after being in this for so long, I'm like, oh, there's not much here in terms of setup. You got like one vid wall, couple lasers, maybe some fog machine. Huh. Meanwhile, I was like, okay, I can just jump in VR real quick and run off to any other club in here and just be blown away.
Something I've been seeing and hearing of more as well is there's a lot of like people in VR. Like I'm going to use Modelon as an example, helping do portals from VR into the real world. Like you see it at Virality and some other events like that. I think that's a pretty cool thing you'll see within some like rave venues in real life. People in real life or meet space and digital space can do that together.
Oh, absolutely. We've actually done a couple as well.
Oh.
We've worked. Our very first one was with Calibrate. Akiyama took a few of their people and went down to Florida at some bar. I can't remember the name of the bar. It was off some highway. And that's all I remember off of that. But I had to kind of finagle my way through like learning how the tech works. And I built a custom version of Rift to accommodate for that, because the pipeline was like we would have the video feed from over there from the DJ performing live coming in here, but we still had the portal wall to display. But also we still had dancers going to each platform that we were sending their feed on like a green screen over to them, which they would key out all the green and overlay on their visuals for the overall experience. So like there's a loop going through here, and I had to like kind of navigate. All right, how can I make this a good experience? How do I, go through and make sure there's no hiccups? Unfortunately, that one kind of flopped on our end because their venue organizer gave out the password next door to their attendees, and the upload just died. We were getting nothing from them. They were getting everything from us. So we were just kind of stuck here, like sending our feed to them while we were getting nothing in world. We ended up like playing our own video in here and having to kind of backfill that. It was a learning experience for sure. The second one we had was with Peppercast down in Texas. That was a lot of fun. We kind of learned from the experience. There's a couple of differences in the pipeline process because they have their own dancers that they pay, and they have this whole like hologram thing. It's like a silk screen looking thing, and they have a projector, and it looks holographic at that point in like a dark space. It's really neat, but I actually went down there in person to help run the IRL side. Like I flew down, and it was a lot of fun. It was definitely another learning experience because I never got to see like the chaos of running around and making sure everything's running smoothly. Like, oh wait, this feed went down. Okay, we gotta like troubleshoot or like put a backup online to like make sure nothing's down for a long period of time. Or like, oh, we're getting like a red lining over here with the sound. Let's turn this down or turn this up. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. They're definitely a lot of work. We're actually about to, well, not here, but there's another event coming up in Texas as well on October 12th. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Focus is going to, from Focus Entertainment, it's going to be throwing down with a bunch of VR DJs in person, and then we're going to be doing another portal event in VR, which I'm helping to run on the VR side of. So, hey, if you're over there, look that up. Gateway in Deep Ellum. Little shout out. But yeah, they're really interesting. I kind of wish the latency between the portals themselves were a bit better, or there was a good way to do like voices and sound balancing. Because like if you're having the portal wall in the same room as the DJ, which everyone wants to be around the DJ, you have all that noise, so you have to kind of mute the people on the other side, and so you have to kind of communicate either through like holding up signs or writing. It's kind of like the old VRchat days of having to write things out. But it'd be really cool to actually like hold a conversation with the latency lower and just the sound balancing. It's something that has to be worked out, but maybe we'll get there eventually.
Okay. So you've mentioned a few things. Now I'm curious now about a few different aspects of a question because I said I enjoyed that earlier, and I want to kind of key into it a bit. Between the portal events you did with Focus Entertainment and some other people, and your real job, what have been some of the people who have never been in VR's response that you've communicated with, like when you do Rift events and stuff like that? What have been the responses to VR, virtual reality, and what you do here?
Some people are kind of interested or curious. A lot of my coworkers are just kind of like, all right, whatever. Like he just
Mm,
talks about this a bunch, and it's it's weird. He's like in VR, he has a headset on, whatever. Like, there's still a little bit of that stigma there.
mm,
I still try to sing its praises and get people in here if they're interested. I'm not going to force it down anyone's throat, but like let them know, like, hey, this was really cool. It's something that we did, and X, Y, Z, and they find the especially like the portal stuff interesting, right? Especially
mm,
for a lot of people that are rave goers that aren't in VR, they didn't know this sort of thing was possible, and they just think it's a really cool experience to tie in. But like you have a lot of normies from day to day to talking about VR chat, and they get a little bit of a stigma there, and like I don't know if I want to dig into that, especially like I don't want to buy a headset is another big thing. Um, but there's a few people I brought in, and they were instantly hooked, right?
mm.
My one buddy, No Sync, they were just actually VJing for the Summer Fest, where the VR chat staffers were like holding their DJ event. I brought him in here because I was like, hey, I had told him about VR chat and like the rave scene forever ago. And then he ended up showing up to one of our board game nights, and he was like, "Hey, I'm kind of curious about this thing because like I do some DJing and I do some VJing stuff. Like I'm kind of interested to see what it's all about." And he had this ancient headset. I don't even know where it came from or what company it was from anymore. It was very obscure, and I tried it on. Props to him for even giving it a shot with that headset because the focal alignment and the blurriness in the screen door was so bad, I was getting a headache after a couple of minutes.
Ah.
Meanwhile, I drug this dude through like a couple of different venues. We stayed up later than we should have on a work night. And I was kind of like world hopping him a bit, and he was immediately in love with what was going on. I didn't even take him here. Like I just took him to like the VRU. I took him to the Trans Academy for a bit, and essentially like dialing in the settings, and along with like showing him here's all the different communities you can find here, and then also let's get your computer spec'd out with the safety settings so you don't crash out. But he fell in love with the place, and yeah, he's a lifer now. He's like, you ruined me. I'm like, I'm sorry, not sorry. You're having fun.
Well, one of the things like it kind of ruined me as well. But one thing I've noticed, people who kind of jump full bore, you kind of forget about like Netflix and stuff and all of that form of entertainment. Because why would you want to sit in front of a TV where you can party on an asteroid with a gargoyle or run through wonderful musical experiences? Like, to be honest, VR kind of has that way of kind of entertaining you differently.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I admit, if I'm watching movies and I want to just be antisocial, like I'll sit down on my, my couch and watch a
Mm.
show on Netflix or whatever. Like we're paying for the service. And I like the big giant screen with surround sound. It's nice. But if I want to be in here and I want to watch something that's like not available for me, or I just want to be like, I'm feeling semi-social, I'll be on Blue. I'll sit in a, popcorn and chill and see whoever shows up. Shows up. Great. Um, it's still comfy regardless.
Mm.
I'll do that. But yeah, it's ruined me in the sense of going into like amusement parks or anything that's thematic, right?
Yeah.
You go into anything like that and you're like, oh, this is not as good as what I'm used to. Going into like amusement parks or anything.
Yeah, I can understand and agree with that. You go to like a theme park or like a real life concert and it's like super basic animatronic could use to like someone's hand animated thing that looks really visual, the giant experiences while you're in the middle of some sort of rift in the middle of nowhere. Then you're in real life meat space, just animatronic dude.
Yeah, exactly. And just like the visuals, right? I mean, my big thing here is like, I have like, I don't know if you can see it with the camera, but like I have this big board of effects that I can run in the world. And I mean, each button does something different.
Hmm. Wow.
And it's just like we play around with these during the events, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you don't get that type of full dive experience unless you're like in a music festival, high on something, maybe, I guess.
Mm. I do remember hearing of one cool thing though that kind of utilizes both. I believe there's one in the US and Europe. It's a like a zombie map arena thing where they kind of have an entire warehouse laid out with like wooden blocks and stairs, but they one-to-one mapped it in VR. So it made it look like a specific
Oh
building and you
yeah.
fight zombies in it. And you just wear the Quest headset running around shooting zombies, but when you step upstairs, you're actually stepping upstairs. Like so they have it mapped perfectly.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen those. I've always wanted to go to one. I thought that was fantastic. Like the merging of the two is I want to go. I think there's the one you're talking about in the US, I think is in New York City. Hopefully they
Think
survived
so.
the pandemic.
Hope they did.
But
I
yeah, it's something I really want to go to.
You know, speaking of pandemic, since you kind of started just before it, what has been the growth of Rift like through the pandemic? What was that experience like for you going through that whole thing and people spending like all day in VR chat?
Um Rift is only well, it's a little over a year and a half old now.
Oh,
Actually, our
my bad.
our second year anniversary is in November. So it's fine. Like we kind of came after like the initial wave.
Ah,
Because like I had my whole like inundation with the scene, kind of hanging out with friends, and that took a while, right? And then it took a long time to build Rift up to what it is now. Like, even like the baseline, it still took me a few months to kind of get everything in there that I wanted to, make sure it was working, because I was still learning Udon too. I mean, I knew how to do general noodle graph from my days working on a real engine with the blueprint system. It's very similar in that
hmm.
regard. You know, it's visual node based coding. But I didn't know how Udon did the functions I was used to in Unreal Engine, so I had to translate both engine function and learn how Udon did things. Um, but yeah, it was kind of a long thing. So in terms of the wave, it just kind of I jumped in and I just saw that everything grow, but I don't know if I noticed it booming from a sense of having that pre-pandemic view, because it was still very
Ah,
light. I was only going into like a couple of publics here and there, and I would jump out, right? Versus once I was in and I was in the pipeline, so to speak, that everyone talks about, you know, I was exploring, I was trying out new things. So it could have been, from my perspective, I was just expanding my horizons, or it was, you know, the boom, you know, with all the influx of users. I don't know which was which.
hmm. Oh, so now that I know you're like less than 2 years old, I do have a question for you. What has it been like running the community for Rift in that aspect, and how do you juggle everything from world building to your day life to running a community?
That is essentially working another full-time job. There has been many a days where I come home from my day job. I'll take an hour nap to mentally reset from the stresses of the day, and then I'll just do nothing but work on Rift stuff the rest of the night. You know, whether that is booking DJs, making the posters, organizing different events with other communities for the Nexus events, or just building the world and thinking of upgrades. So like this world is constantly evolving, and every event we do is a new build of the world because of either the improvements I made, bug fixes, or at the very least, every time we run an event, there's a new entry in the computer that shows like, hey, here's who's playing, here's who's all dancing, also here's lore from the last event. And then we have a Patreon locker room, so right to the left of where you spawn into the world. You can go in there, and there's the first wall you kind of look into as the doors open is a poster wall.
Mm.
So that has all the posters that we run events at. It used to be the entire time we've been running, but I ran out of room on the wall and texture memory size on the Quest version. So I limited it to whatever events were happening per station. That's been a new thing.
Ah.
So all the ones that happened in our year one venue, all those posters are there. This is all year two posters now in here in Epsilon. Um, but yeah.
Hmm. So, what was your first anniversary like, and what did you do to celebrate it?
Oh, that was a lot of fun. So a lot of it was the staff I have on hand that are DJs. So Ghost Casual, DJ Hang Tight, Crump Cakes, We also brought in Sly. That was a lot of fun because I really enjoyed their set. And I believe it was, what was the last one? Was it Smiles and Wiggles? No, that was the hypothetical event. Oh, I'm missing one more, and I'm going to feel like an asshole for not remembering off the top of my head. Was it Cat? I think it might have been Cat Yusha. That makes a lot of sense. Cat Yusha. Ray Spartan. Sorry, Cat, if you're watching this. But it was a lot of fun. It was the opening of Site Epsilon, so this venue here. So it had all of the model upgrades. We had more visual effects in the system. We upgraded from Pro TV 2 to the beta for 3. And we added a new effect. So we added in like special things. I before the interview started, I mentioned the windward mode in here, where like we kind of have the water and the clouds and the windmills for him. That was during the anniversary, was kind of the start of me adding in special modes for DJs every so often. So when Sly went up there, because I had access to the Slyfest repo at the time, I asked permission, like, hey, can I use the whale that you use for like flying around? And he's like, sure. He didn't know the context. So when he was playing, I turned on the water mode in here, and we had different, like we had the whale on a loop animation. It was like flying through the sky and coming up and above the water. And that was like the visual in the world for their entire set. Along with like the other stuff we typically do on top of it. So that's what we kind of did special for the 1 year anniversary. I don't really have a plan yet for our 2nd year anniversary. Life gets busy, especially this time of the year with summer plans. Lots of conventions, vacations, and obligations to go to. So eventually I need to plan that out. I might have a new room for our Patreon members coming up shortly, like a lounge situation. So if it gets a little overwhelming, they can go in there and chill. Because I know it can be in here. Like I try my best to do accessibility. Like you can turn off a lot of the effects in here, depending on if you're just photosensitive or if you're a photographer. It turns off the effects that really mess with your photos. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a new area is fun. And I want to offer more for our Patreon members because the locker room is neat. You know, like if you become a Patreon member, you can get like pictures, like you get your own individual customized locker. But that's really it. So I want to do something a little more.
So I have another sort of question kind of on lines with the anniversary, like the themes of the anniversary as well. What has been the VRchat's community's response to Rift existing and the events you've been doing? What have been some feedback you have got from people and the people who regular?
I think it's been like positive. I haven't really heard anyone say anything super negative about it, other than people that just like this isn't their genre of venue, right? And I've taken a lot of feedback as we go along. Even in its conception, I try to take feedback in from like the DJs, VJs at dance, like, hey, your DJ booth or your dance platforms, what do you want to see out of it? Like, what's your current gripes with what's existing, and how can I make it better? Right. So we kind of design our whole DJ booth system here in accordance with that, but also like we didn't have the photosensitivity like options at the beginning. Like I was running events and it was still very early days. And my one friend Rocking Horse came in here and she was like, hey, you ever thought about this, that, or the other? I was like, that's a great idea. I'll figure out how it works. And we built in the accessibility stuff. Turning things on and off. But overall, I love hearing the stories of people coming in here like, dude, this was like my first VR rave experience. Like it always holds a special place for me. Like, oh, I'm there too for me. Oh my God. It's honestly, it makes my heart feel full whenever I see that. Or like people come in here and they'll have an Avi with the Rift logo on it. Cause like, yeah, I remember doing that myself. Like, or my friends like putting all the different club logos on their avatars' clothing to represent. I'm like, maybe I've made it.
Well, one thing I have found is great VRchat late game content. Like you finish the whole campaign, like what do I do now? For VRchat is showing other people and allowing them to have a first time experience, whether it's music venue worlds or the music visualizers, games or whatnot. I feel it's really wholesome to see and get that little insight to the first player experience when you're the one facilitating someone else's first time experience in something.
Absolutely. And I've always enjoyed that role too. I mean, even when I was still a noob, like I would meet new people like, hey, have you seen this world? You go world hopping. And you're like, oh, I know about this. And it's a shared experience, even with the end game. There's so much to see here. But yeah, having, all these like newer people come in that have never seen this experience or never experienced the rave scene come in and be like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is my first thing. It's really cool. It gives you that little glimpse into like, oh, this is when I was young. Hey, I was like you.
I used to carry bags 4 miles uphill twice before I could get into VR or whatever.
Yeah. Hey, back in my day, I didn't have full body trackers. Hey, you had to pay an arm and a leg. But once those arm and leg were gone, you didn't need the trackers anymore. Hey, that kind of defeats the purpose. But it's fun, especially with upgrading the world all the time. Even a lot of the normal regulars we have come through here don't know about all the features. We tried to combat that recently. We put out like a top 10 things you may not know about Rift video. Doesn't have that many views, so it probably didn't do its job. But I come through here and like people like see one of the avatars, like when you see the little volley at the computer. Someone thought, like, a lot of people think that's an actual person like sitting there typing because they're hand animated, like it moving around and doing stuff. Or like I'll see the hedgehog Abby out and about somewhere. I'm like, oh my God, they love my Abby. It's like it's a public. We have 4, 6, 7 public Abbies in this world that anyone can use.
Oh, wow.
It's one of those things that like, oh, you don't have an Opti? All right, well, we have a whole bunch. We have Spartans, we have Time Spirits, we have a Hedgehog, we have an Evolue, like we have a little Toothless Dragon. Choose your pick. Choose your poison, right? So that's where kind of that spawned from. But yeah, it's really cool. It's like someone finding out new things. Like they don't explore the settings panel either. And so I'm like, hey, we have flight in this world, like the furry and chill worlds. You flap your arms, you can glide around and stuff like that. They're like, what? No way. Like, yeah, go turn it on the panel, go find out. Or we've had someone who's been here almost since its inception and they didn't know about the safety walls. It was like, oh yeah, I just followed the asteroid this whole time. You're telling me I didn't have to? I could be stopped.
Oh God!
I remember we did an interview with Crazium Games and we talked about that very thing, where you can make a button, make it big and red with giant text. This is the on button, and no one will know it's the on button. Or it's there. It's like mentally people and players kind of look around and like mentally turn off all the things that are useful. And finally, this thing, you could point at it. You could tell them it's there. You could have a tutorial video hand-animated person pointing at it. Where's the on button?
Yup. Oh my God. It's so true. I actually watched that. I watched it before this at one point, and I was like, whenever they mentioned, I'm like, it's so true. I felt validated. But yeah, I mean, it's really fun too when the people realize that Rainbow Road is functional and you can run around on it too.
Oh.
There's little speed boosts on there, and like you just click on the flag and it'll teleport you over there. Or if you want, if you turn on the flying, you can fly over there. There's lots of options how to do things, but it's really cool. Like didn't like geek out over, oh, you can do this, and then there's something more that's really neat. We keep a lot of our cool features around the DJ booth too, so the DJs feel like they're still being attentive and they can judge the crowd, and everyone's here to enjoy the music first and foremost. But everyone gets antsy, especially if you're staying here for 5 hours. You need something to do other than just listen to music. So yeah, we had a couple of fun things in here, but also it kind of enhances the experience. Like if someone's playing what's the right sorry, I'm having a brain fart moment. Deja vu, da 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 da.
Yes, the anime intro. Yeah, Drift Racer.
Yeah. you get drift racer, you're gonna want to jump into a froggy car or something equivalent and go run around a rainbow road, you know, like fulfill that fantasy while still being around and being interactive with the crowd and the DJ. And like even with the flying, you get some really cool stuff where it's like really epic. You're like soaring through the sky. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go take off and fly around now. You'll often see me actually, like every so often, I'll ask one of my other staff members to take over the visual effects, and I'll just start flying around in circles, like flying through the different rifts, because there's triggers on each of these small ones. If you fly into it, you get sent to another random one to fly out of.
Oh, that's neat. Oh.
So it kind of like stops any trolling, but also it's just a fun little feature.
Oh. So with some of these features like Rainbow Road, these little drifts and what you've mentioned, what made you want to add them into your world, and were there any sort of specific like reasons for them?
So the Rainbow Road spawned from our very first meme night. Every so often we'll hold like genre thematic nights, which, you know, I try to mix it up beyond just your typical like D&B, your base house, whatever. The first of our more fun ones was meme night, and it's been a hit every time. Essentially, I'll tell DJs, hey, you have a half-hour set. Play whatever meme mix, dank, just troll you want to play. As long as it sounds good, have fun. And it's been a really fun experience seeing them like interpret meme. So Stay a While we had on here for their first time here, and their entire set was all-star. Just done in different genres, different tempos, different remixes. And so we had him, the dancers, and most of the crowd at that point in time like change into Shrek avatars and just start dancing and performing. It was beautiful. And then we had I think it was not Kitsune mixes, it was Black Star. They would play a bunch of songs that would hype up, it would build and build, but they'd never drop. And they would just go up again. The entire half hour. It was essentially like musically edging the entire crowd for a half hour. But I digress. I'm going on another tangent.
No.
So
I
the
think
Rainbow
that's
Road
awesome.
spawned out of that event. Essentially, I spruced up the place. I put in like memes into the skybox. So I put like the giant Rick and Morty "show me what you got" head like over there. I put like the Rick and Morty like screaming moon in the back over there. I put like Harambe over there, you know, like funny shit. Just to spruce it up a little bit, give it more thematic. So Rainbow Road started from that. I'm like, okay, this could be a fun little thing to play on. Like, oh yeah, Mario Kart Rainbow Road. It's not the full thing, but hey, it's what I could do on a short notice. I had the speed boost working, and it was a track. And it was really fun too, because it takes some skill to learn how to navigate without getting yourself yeeted off into the void. It's very easy to do unless you know what you're doing. So it kind of spawned from there. People enjoyed it. So I'm like, all right, I'll keep it. There was some debate whether or not I want to bring it from site alpha, where we first introduced it, over to Epsilon. I'm like, I'm not going to deny people Rainbow Road. I'll just add some other fun, you know, gimmick. It's the occupied time, which eventually was the flight system, which that was kind of just from feedback. A lot of the features in here are just based on feedback, things I hear from attendees or DJs or something I've noticed. I'm like, okay, I need to fix that, or I need to make this better. So the flight system, I think it was during the Slyfest mini after party. Scaly Bloke came up to me, and it was like the first furry I had in here that, you know, like proper furry, and like they had like a winged avatar. Like, can I fly in here? What do you mean? No. It was like, oh well, you know, I think it was Virality had it, and you know, these furry and chills worlds have it, like where if I just go into the world, I can automatically fly. Like I just flap my arms, take off, and go. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. And then there was also like the Luma driver for the old like Virality avatars. They're like, why isn't my Luma driver or like my Luma, you know, materials working? Like, I didn't know this was a thing. I'm not a furry. I'm not inundated with that culture. So, you know, after that event, I made the world capable of like using the Luma driver, you know, materials, and then we added the flight system. Open Flight is the name of the package there from Happy Robot. It's open source one. It's great. It's worked out really well, and every time I have an issue or I want to, you know, suggest something, the creators really open to talking about it and giving feedback. But yeah, so a lot of this stuff is just feedback.
Oh, wow. Well, that's really cool. So I have another question for you as well, because you mentioned the Slyfest after party. What was it like doing stuff with Slyfest and your whole experiences with them?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work. Obviously, because you're doing, 3 different minis plus the main 3 stages. There's a lot of work involved, and kudos to the team. Like, it was the first time I'd done I'd been part of a team that did a large scale project in VRchat. And I was really happy to help out. Working with, Swa, Sly, Eric, like there's so many people involved. But like I was on the world dev team, so I mostly worked with Swa. Um, it was just a really cool time. Like and definitely gave me perspective on what goes into those festivals. Like I already had an idea of like what it takes to build one world for an event. Nevertheless, essentially 6. If you're counting the main stage as different worlds. It was just really neat, and they're really great people too. They're great beans. They're good beans. Um, I highly suggest if you have the skills and whenever a Fest comes back from their hiatus, like if you want to apply to be part of their dev team, like feel free. It's just you gotta be communicative and try to meet deadlines because you only have so much time to work on it before release. It is a crunch at the end, especially if you're doing Quest.
Okay. So now that you mentioned Quest, I have a question as well. Um, is there any difference between with what you do outside VR and VR between how people handle and deal with Quest compatible things?
Inside and outside, like, are you
Yeah,
talking
like
like
inside
day
VR,
job stuff or like
yeah,
in
day job and VR chat. Is there any difference between the two, or do one think of it more than the other? I'm just kind of curious now that you mentioned.
As I mentioned before, like for my day job, I have to make
Mm.
sure stuff runs on a Chromebook in a web browser. So it's very like optimized, very, stylized or like
Mm.
performant, low poly stuff. So in that regard, it helped me understand, at least give me a leg up on doing the Quest stuff. Now,
Hmm.
Quest has come a long way, especially now the Quest 3 is out. People are now not really using the Quest 1s on standalone. It's been depreciated, and Quest 2s are still usable, but like there's better options out there.
Mm.
Even on what I was surprised about with VRChat was the mobile, like the Android stuff. I haven't tested iPhone because I'm not a Mac fanboy at all. And give me my Windows. I don't want that closed garden shit. But I was really surprised in the performance on mobile of all things. Like it seems to perform sometimes even better than Quest standalone.
Oh, wow.
Probably because you're only rendering one screen versus 2, but yeah, I was really impressed. And you can do more with it. So even in this world, right, for the Quest version of this world, we still have the spotlights, we still have the lasers, we still have some of our particle effects. We can't do anything screen space shader wise because it's some of that is like post processing stuff. Others are materials that are just too heavy. But I mean, we still have like our water mode in here as well. I'm just kind of bringing more things online for Quest as we go along. Once I start doing like benchmarking, but yeah, come our last event, we do have a few more special, visuals in here that we didn't have before.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you last couple of questions before we start wrapping this up. First is, where did your name come from and why do
Sure.
you use it?
Not that impressive, really. So back in the old, middle school days of playing old school RuneScape, my friends were introducing me to that game for the first time. I'm like, okay, let me create a character name, and I was like, for some reason, I want to be named Torchflame, but they didn't have it available. They had like Torchflame 1, so I'm like, okay, I went with that. And I met up with my buddy the next day at school, and I told him my username so we can friend up. And he's like, "Well, that's kind of stupid. Like, why don't you do something more catchy, like with your name, like AztecAngelo?" And I'm like, "I want a torch flame. What can I tell you?" And I kind of kept AztecAngelo as a backup for like the backup account and wherever I went. But the thing was, every MMO I went to, like Torchflame was always taken. I'm like, I can't create my online identity with this.
Mm.
This is not working. But AztecAngelo, hey, never taken. So like no matter where I went, it was always available. So that's the kind of what I built up and started using from there on in.
Okay. In the avatar you're in, what made you choose that, and what makes you keep on using it? And is there anything about or
Oh
features in
geez.
the avatar that have meaning?
Yeah, give me 1 second. There we go. Better tracking. Oh god, no, that's not better tracking. Give me 1 second. Well, we can talk about the one feature, right? The AFK pose. That's fun. So the AFK is kind of reminiscent of what my character base is in general. It is a gargoyle. Growing up, my dad had like the old VHS tape of gargoyles, like the Disney cartoon.
Yep.
And he would also have like some taped episodes on a random VHS tape. So like, if I was just like bored or like sick, I'd just pop it in the VCR and showing my age. But we had to watch random cartoons, like fast forward through all the commercials eventually from time to time. But like, I really enjoyed the show. I was like, oh, they're really cool looking. Like, I love the design, like the whole concept. And honestly, if you watch it today, you jump into like a popcorn and chill or watch it on Disney Plus. Like, the story still holds up. It's still a great show, even though it's a bit dated for its technology. So there was that, right? I love the series, and I thought it was really cool to like be one. The other bit is the creative side of it. Here, let me switch into like the original fit for this. So this was the original outfit for it. So I really love playing like the God of War games, like from PS4 onwards. That's kind of where I started. I know some sorry OGs, like I didn't have the system at the time. But I really enjoyed it, and I actually cosplay Kratos IRL whenever I go to conventions.
Oh wow.
So my facial structure, the beard, it's all still very similar. So I just went with it, and it's been a lot of fun. And then I've always just loved Mass Effect, so I grabbed the N7 arm and put it on there as a prosthetic. From there, it's just been, adding on more normal clothes because I felt out of place a lot of the raves I went to. I'm like, oh, I feel like this old, Norse Greek god, but like everyone else is in tech wear and some booth babe or e-girl, e-boy. It's like, oh, maybe get some normal clothes. And that's where it's kind of going from there. And the Galaxy Wings, honestly, I just kind of really enjoyed the look of it. Like I was fumbling through Poyomi one day and I'm like, oh, what's this Panosphere thing? Oh, I like it. So then I tossed in that Galaxy because, why not? It also kind of matches, the Rift aesthetic to a degree. Let's see. And then I have my Stone. I can still go to Stone if I wanted to. I have this running joke with Ropai. I don't know if you ever met them or not, but they're like this red panda with sunglasses on, a Hawaiian shirt. And we had this running joke ever since we met up. If they take their glasses off, it just turns me to stone like Medusa. So every time he comes around, he'll take them off and go, hey, Ed. I'm like, oh shit, no! Strike a pose. So that's a lot of fun. Otherwise, let's see, anything else on this? I have my mug that you saw before. It's got the Ministry Promotions, which is one of our partners on there. It's got Tube, Calibrate, which is another one of our partners. The Rift sticker, like we have for like Patreon rewards. Mayor of Texas was our very first Patreon member, so I got their logo on here. Sly Fest. We also ended up becoming one of their community partners for last year. That was an honor, honestly. And then Dragon Army, because we've done a couple events with them so far, and Bubby's a good friend of mine. And then just the new logo for my core friend group, DigiQuill Records. Still got to build the world for that, but it'll get there eventually. Everything in its time. The backlog of different worlds and projects you want to work on never ends. And otherwise, just a lighter. This was the very first prop I actually put on my avatar because you're in music events. Real emotional moment. Just start waving it. And then it turned into, oh, people here are smoking too? All right, well, you need a light and you have fun. It's just fun stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's really it for my avatar, at least as far as it goes with this one. I have like a beach outfit version and a pirate version as well. But yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Aztec, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to meet you, hear about Rift, from Rainbow Road to All-Star for an entire set and everything else. It's been absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me on here. I've been watching your stuff for a bit now, and low key was like, hey, I kind of want to get on there at some point, and then it just happened. So the stars align over at PJKT.
Well, thank you very much for watching. It's an absolute honor you do.
Mhm.
So thank you. And
Yes.
where can people go
Yes,
find
sir.
you to join and look at your stuff?
Oh, we do have a Discord. We don't have a vanity link. But we are also on Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch. Yeah, I think I said that one. We have a link tree as well. But essentially, a lot of our socials, it's Rift VR Club, since a lot of like Rift and Rift VR was taken a lot of places. So that's where we're at. Yeah, and also our VRC group as well. If you ever find your way stumbling into site Epsilon in the dome, there's a poster on the wall. If you click on it, you can join the group.
Oh, well, make sure you check the Hoobly What's It in the description. There's lots of cool stuff down there that I don't think anyone ever clicks, but you should go on an adventure down that way. Find your way into Rift and check it out. And I got 2 questions for you, the audience, this time. One is, what happened to Adrift? I must know. Also, with that said, what has been your favorite meme game moment? It could be VR, it could be inside Mario Kart, it could be whatever. I'd love to know it. And Raptor, you know the thing.
Yeah, no matter what you do, folks, you might be here, there, floating around in space. In this case, earlier that you did not see, I'm going to put on the count of falling off this asteroid. We'll talk to you later. Have a good one, folks.